Welcome, Impactful Parents. It's time for the Impactful Parenting Podcast, where I give you parenting tips and resources to make you a more impactful parent to your school-age child. I am your host, Kristina Campos. Welcome, Impactful Parents. Today we're going to talk about grandparents who raise their grandchildren. Should they really be doing that? Hello, my name is Kristina Campos. I'm founder of the Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children to turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I'm a mom of 4 kids, a teacher that has taught every grade from preschool through high school, and today I help moms and dads like yourself to navigate that exhausting, confusing, frustrating, but rewarding world of parenting. So welcome to the Impactful Parent. And today I also have my co-host with me, Rodrigo Bravo. And Rodrigo is a co-parenting mediator out of the state of Texas. He is a parenting coach and he is a dad of 2 boys. Rodrigo brings a dad's perspective onto the Impactful Parent stage to give you even more expertise and an added perspective on our parenting topics. Thank you for being here, Rodrigo.
Excited to be here as always, Kristina. Appreciate the invitation to talk.
Yeah, we don't talk about the kids that get raised by grandparents instead of actual parents. We don't talk about them very often, and yet we both serve that type of community. When we say parents, we're just saying really people who raise children, and grandparents are definitely that, especially in a lot of minority families where it is much more of a norm for grandparents to kind of take over for the parents and, just do a lot of the heavy lifting. I know even myself, Rodrigo, I was mainly raised by my grandmother because my actual parents, yeah, they were around, but they had to work so hard, full-time jobs all the time. So who took care of me? Grandma, because I didn't have to go to a daycare. Luckily, grandma was able to take care of me. And that is really, really typical of a lot of minority families, specifically Hispanic families, of course, too, but a lot of minority families. I'm just curious, what's your relationship with your grandparents and how did they help you in your upbringing as we get today's topic started?
So the funny thing about it was that I too was raised by my grandparents in a certain type of way where I would go spend summer vacations in Mexico. Pretty much every single year. There was just one year that I didn't go to Mexico for the summer. And so during those summer months, my parents would basically just drop us off. We would go at the end of the school year, usually like that weekend after school ended, go straight over there to Mexico. Maybe my parents would be there for maybe a week or so. And then they would come back to Texas. My sister and I, we would just stay there and just be there with my grandparents. Granted, we were visitors. We would, just be kind of visiting, but it was under their house, and it was always grandma's rules. It didn't matter which grandma we were staying with, whether it was my dad's grandma or my mom's grandma. Either way, they were raising us, and there was quite a few moments when they had to be the disciplinarians, when they had to do things and dictate things and so forth. So I definitely had that experience where my grandparents were the ones raising me in that sense. So that's how they kind of played a role in facilitating my childhood. One last point, I actually was enrolled in school in Mexico because at one point my dad was not able to go back to pick us up. We were only enrolled for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Then he brought us back in. But of course, now we're in school. My grandma's, making, she was always making us food. But now it's like, okay, get up, let's go. And andábamos con toda la chusma, we were all with all the other kids because it's a big family, But yeah, that's my upbringing with my grandparents.
Don't forget that the podcast is just a small part of what the Impactful Parent offers. Start your journey to becoming a more impactful parent by downloading the Impactful Parent app. Available on your phone's app store or by going to theimpactfulparent.com. See you on the inside. And when we talk about the difference between babysitting and actually your grandparent raising you, I look at discipline. Were they a disciplinarian, like you were saying? Were they there on the daily doing those rotary things that parents do all the time, getting the kids up, making them food? If your grandparent was doing that, then they were definitely an active part and help to raise you. But grandparents don't have a lot of rights. And a lot of times, more times than I wish would happen in the world, there is an absentee parent and there is a grandparent who steps up and comes in and helps this child. And even when that happens, even without two parents that are just completely gone out of this child's life, those grandparents actually don't have a lot of rights. And so I wanted to show you a video today just to kind of make everybody aware of kind of the reality of grandparents' rights.
The mother of a 7-year-old little girl was tragically killed in a car crash. Well, after her death, her parents stepped up and took custody of the little girl. The reason why they did was because the dad wasn't around. He hadn't been around in about 6 years. As a matter of fact, that little girl wouldn't know him if he walked in the room. He had paid child support throughout her life, but that's about it. Hadn't really had anything at all to do with her. The grandparents, however, had played a significant role in this child's life. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, they went to a lawyer's office and said, hey, what do we need to do to make sure that we're covering all our bases, that we can enroll her in school, take her to the doctor, that the dad won't pop up at some point and say, I want her. What do we need to do? Well, the lawyer said, let's go ahead and file a case in court, in juvenile court, and ask for custody of the child. It's called a dependent neglect case. So that's what they did. But in doing so, they had to put the father on notice of that case. He had to be given notice. In other words, he had to be told and presented with the papers that they had filed in court. And when he was, guess what? He popped up and said, hey, I want custody of my daughter, even though he hadn't seen her in 6 years. The grandparents were devastated. The lawyer told him, hey, there's not going to be much we can do. If he wants custody, he's probably going to get custody. You know, parents have a superior parental right to their children. If one parent dies, then the other parent automatically gets custody of that child unless it can be proven in court that that parent poses a substantial risk of harm to that child. In this case, they couldn't do that. And even though dad had not seen that child in 6 years, he could get custody of that child because of the doctrine of superior parental rights. What do you think about that in this case? Do you think the grandparents should have gotten custody, or do you think it's okay that the father comes up after 6 years and can get custody of the child?
So when I originally saw this video off of TikTok, that is created by a lawyer who just poses these interesting questions on TikTok for us to think about, kind of ruminate over. It made me so sad. I was thinking 6 years old is not a baby. Like, that kid has no idea who their dad is, and their grandparent is everything to them. And then just like that, their grandparents don't have any rights. What are your thoughts when you heard this video?
I think a lot of folks don't actually understand how limited the rights are of not only grandparents, aunts, and uncles, but also non-parents. And they feel that, because there is maybe some bloodline or some type of familiarity with the child, that they automatically get some type of rights, that there's something that's kind of bestowed upon those people that have been in the child's life. But especially here in Texas, it's not based on that. It is based on, as the attorney had said, superior access rights, and that's parents. The mom and dad have ultimate rights over everything, and if one parent is no longer in the picture, that other parent has all the rights, every single right basically attainable to them, even if they've been absent the entire time. That is a tricky situation there for those particular grandparents, because unfortunately, by contacting the parent, they are kind of showing what the hand is now, right? They're telling them, hey, something happened and now we're in charge. We would like to do this and that. So they're doing the right thing in covering their bases, but they're also setting themselves up. If you actually go to the Texas website, it's actually called texasaccess.org. If you go to that website and you look up grandparent visitation rights, their best advice is actually maintain good, positive relationships with both parents. That is their first piece of advice. They don't tell you like, oh, file this paperwork or, oh, you should do this. No, no, no. They say maintain positive relationships with both parents. Why? Because they know that the best way to keep access and to maintain access with your grandchild is by having good relationships with your kids, not some legal standard, not some legal doctrine or some type of legal notice. The best way to maintain that relationship is to have positive relationships. So I think this video actually demonstrates to a lot of folks how the law is completely, and I think appropriately, in favor of moms and dads. The question becomes is when one of them is not active, the grandparents step in, right? Like you noted earlier, Kristina, they step in, they fulfill a role. Now all of a sudden they're expected to not only abstain from that role, but actually pretty much close out their role completely. It's heartbreaking, it's sad, but it's unfortunately one of the ways that happens because of the way the laws are written. There are some recourses, but at the end of the day, you have to prove that the parent is somehow putting the child in danger, or that the parent is a danger to the child, or something like that. That there's some type of danger, that you are the best person to take care of the child, and the burden of proof on that is very heavy. And you could just imagine that too. If we're going to take if you're going to take a parent away from their child, the burden of proof has to be pretty heavy. You can't go around just making accusations or saying something, or even in this particular case, saying, hey, he hasn't been around this whole time. Because of that, he must not love her, and he must, he's not going to take care of her. Unfortunately, no, that's not good enough. You actually have to prove that there's some type of harm that's going to occur to the child. When I first saw the video, I thought, yeah, that's pretty rough, but also it's the law.
I just want to be like, mic drop, bam, when you said grandparents need to have a good relationship with both parents. I mean, because that's really the bottom line, what you just said there. And I'm glad that they're promoting that in Texas, because this whole thing it does break my heart. I know there's a lot of controversy on both sides, but more than anything, I wanted to do this episode to make everybody aware. There are parents out there, I know, who are single parenting it out right now. Maybe you have an absentee partner that's dad or mom that's out there. And who's helping you the most? Your parents, right? So like they're helping you. But if something happens to you, you're automatically, as a parent, might be thinking, oh, my parents will take over if something happens to me. And that's not how this is going to work. So if you're a parent thinking that it's just going to default to your parents if something happens to you and your kids are going to be fine, that may not be the case. I wanted to educate parents on this. I want to educate then grandparents on this, that if you are stepping up and you are playing this parental role and you're like really making a difference in this kid's life, you should know that there could be a rug swept up from underneath you if something happens to, let's say, your child, and then you don't like that other parent, and maybe they are an absentee parent. In this case, where these grandparents were doing the right thing, they had to inform the dad of what happened. They definitely could have gotten the whole rug swept out from underneath them, even though they were doing absolutely the right thing. And all because they didn't have a relationship with the dad. So just again, everybody just to get educated on that grandparents, you do need to have a good relationship with both sides. And I know that's not easy. I mean, especially when there's a lot of resentment there, probably with either abandonment, going through divorce. There's a lot of things that happen that drift families apart, but Impactful Parents, become a part of the show. This is so cool that I am inviting moms and dads from all walks of life and backgrounds to join me in my virtual recording studio. I am super excited because you get to add your opinions and comments to the parenting topic. Plus, you get a shout out your business. Just submit an interest form at theimpactfulparent.com/guest to sign up.
It's definitely hard, Kristina, because when two folks, two parents break up, right? There's sides taken, right? And so, obviously, one side is going to be for their child's side, right? And the other side is going to be for their child's side. It's almost kind of a given, right? So you almost don't expect those grandparents to have good relations with both parents. Super tough. But that is actually the best way to do about it, is kind of, if you foresee this maybe happening or something like that happening, definitely establishing relationships with both parents and just being, hey, look, we're a neutral party. We're here for our grandchild. We're not saying you're wrong or they're wrong or anything like that. We just want to make sure that we're here to provide benefit for both of y'all. And it can be very tough. Trust me, it can be very tough, especially with parents that have poor communication skills. Many times that I'm a mediator or co-parenting coach, that's the first thing. The communication skills are terrible. The folks are not communicating directly. They're using the kids as a vessel to spread their messages. People are taking sides. There's still anger. There's still resentment. So it's very tough, super tough in that regard. But grandparents should still kind of reach out. Just to go a little bit further, especially here in Texas, the section that Texas grandparents will refer to would be section 153.432. I just looked that up. That's actually the section that an attorney would lead you to. And that's the section that allows a suit for possession or access by a grandparent. So basically they're saying it's on the grandparents' burden to show that it would be such an impairment to the child that it would harm them. That's super tough. Super tough. We all know that, kids should have their grandparents in their lives, and it's a great relationship and this and that. But is it so much that it's detrimental? I don't know. I don't think you can do that, because there's been kids throughout, the ages that never met their grandparents and grew up, well. And so in that case, you can't make that argument. You'd have to make an argument that says, hey, look, there's been cases of abuse. There's been neglect, something very, very substantial and very heavy, because again, you're asking the courts to either deny a parent their right to be a parent or to give them access and deny them time to be a parent. Now that's a heavy proof. That's a heavy, heavy burden. And the state of Texas, and rightfully many states and the state of Texas, they rightfully ask that. I think that's something that they should ask, because we don't want to go around just taking parents' rights away. And even though this case, as you heard, when the attorney is saying, hey, this guy hasn't been in the child's life the whole time, they haven't did this and that, who's to say that maybe he said, you know what, I don't want to deal with her mom. That's the reason I can't do it. It's a shitty excuse me. I think it's a terrible excuse, right? But let's say the guy just says, hey, I didn't want to deal with her mom. She was crazy. Now that she's gone, oh my God, maybe I can have a relationship with my daughter. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. I don't know the particulars of the case, right? But that's not far-fetched to think of. That maybe, that's the case. Maybe he is a jerk. Maybe he doesn't care about his daughter and now he's just being petty. Who knows? But at this point, the benefit of the doubt does go to the parent. And I think you should do that, unless there's a clear case of harm that this parent is doing or is applying to his child.
This same lawyer put out a separate video, completely different case. Let's watch a similar but different situation.
The grandparents played a pivotal, important role in the grandchild's life. Now, I've said before that grandparents don't have rights. Well, that's not entirely true. In certain situations, if a grandparent can show that the absence of a relationship between them and the grandchild would pose a substantial risk of harm to the grandchild, then the court can give limited visitation rights to grandparents. Well, in this case, mom gave birth, came back to the house where her parents lived, and lived there for about a year with the child, and the grandparents helped raise the child. Well, after about a year, mom moved out and left the child there, and they became the sole caregivers of that child, all the way up until the child was about 4 years old. At that point, mom had gotten her life together. She came back and said, hey, I'm taking my child. They got into a disagreement. Mom said, hey, you're never seeing this child again. Well, at that point, they didn't like that. They hired a lawyer. They petitioned the court for grandparent visitation. They were able to prove to the court that the absence of that relationship or loss of that relationship between the grandparents and the grandchild would pose a substantial risk of harm to that child. Well, in that case, the court agreed and the court gave them limited grandparent visitation. 1 day a month on a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., they got to see their grandchild. That was it. And that's pretty much all the court could do in that situation. What do you think about that? Do you think grandparents should have more of a right to see and visit their grandchildren? Or do you think the parents should be the ones that make that call? Because after all, they're the parents of the child. It's a difficult situation. What do you think about that? What do you think the solution would be?
The court, in this particular case, only granted visitation 1 day a month. That's it. 1 day a month. That's nothing.
I will say this, hearing that those grandparents got at least 1 day, not even a day, right? It's like half a day, if that, of visitation with their child, is not bad. I know that sounds terrible. I know that sounds crazy, but that's not bad. That's, hey, it's 1 month, make the most of the time, and be supportive. And again, it's all about creating positive relationships. Those are opportunities for those grandparents that, when they do see their child, to just say, hey, we love you, et cetera, if you need anything. And then extend the olive branch to the parents. Say, hey, look, I know it's just once a month, but maybe if you need a time off, if you got a date going on, we'll babysit. You don't got to worry about this and that. And then just be consistent with it. Be consistent with it. And most of the times, if you're kind and if you're considerate and compassionate, that'll win. That'll win out where the parent will eventually say, hey, you know what? I kind of do need a babysitter. I got a date going on, or, hey, you know what? I got called into work, and I don't, even if it's financial, I don't want to pay for a babysitter, but the grandparents, they'll take care of her. Yeah, why not? This and that. You start developing that positive relationship and start communicating in a way that's beneficial for both. It's, it can turn around. It can definitely turn around. I know that I've had cases before where grandparents are looking for, that relationship, and it's been successful. I've also had cases that are negative, that have basically been a pity match. Petty match. People going, petty for petty, and just doing tit for tat and doing this and that, and it's terrible. The kids are the only ones that really suffer out of it. But yeah, I've had that before. In fact, I was part of a mediation case where grandparents were looking to have a community. They were thinking of mediating first before they take the legal action. And I met the grandparents, great grandparents, great people. They genuinely were just, hey, we just want to make sure our little girl, is fine, etc. And the dad still had these emotions from the relationship he had with the mom. And the mom was no longer in the picture. And he still had these emotions. So what he basically did was transfer him over to the grandparents. And so he could not move past that. So no, and using language like, oh, F them. And you know what, if they want to see her, they're going to have to wait just like I did. And the way their daughter made me wait. And this, you could just tell there was a lot of pain there. There was a lot of regrets, a lot of just a lot of hurt that he was expressing, and that he was unfortunately transferring over now to them. I'm sorry, because either he hasn't gone through his therapy that he probably should, or he didn't get the closure that he needed. And so what happens is you hold on to this, and the little girl is going back and forth, but at the end of the day, and she wants to see her grandparents. From all accounts, she loved her grandparents, but the grandparents didn't have those rights. And he wasn't a bad dad either. It wasn't like he was out of the picture. The way the attorney describes his video, it sounds like this guy's never been in the picture, right? This guy was, now was he there in a positive role, and was he being the great co-parent that everybody? No, I don't think he was, but he was there, and he was up to date on his child support. He would occasionally go to her school. to plays or whatever, I think it was dance recitals, things like that, so you get, hey, he's kind of fairly active, and he's doing what he's supposed to do. There's some tension there. But when it came to this and he was given full custody, he went full custody, where her side of the family was basically completely shut off. And it's painful. The only one that suffers is really the daughter, who had a positive relationship with the grandparents. Now she's not going to get to see them. It's painful for the grandparents. They're not going to be able to see their granddaughter. And the only thing I told them was like, hey, you're going to have to either write letters or send messages or something to that effect, letting him know like, hey, we understand, but we want to see our daughter. And if you want to drop her off and this and that. And of course, they were sad. They were sad. They were crying. And how do you expect us to write a letter to him? And I said, I get it. It sounds tough, but you do have to start, building a relationship with him, because at the end of the day, it's his call. It's his call. I believe she was 8 at the time. And so it's still a while till she can call her own shots, and by the time she's, 12, 13, 14, that maybe she can have a voice in where she goes or where she can go. The relationship may have withered by then, and it's not that important to her anymore, so I definitely advise them like, hey, do what you can to build that relationship with him. And with him, I mean, he just wasn't hearing it. I try to express, hey, she has a good relationship with them. This is a good opportunity for you to build, with her family and this and that. And he wasn't having it. He just was not having it. And from his point of view, he was like, hey, I wasn't given the chance. Why should I give him a chance? And I don't think it's right at all. I think it's very much bullshit. I mean, this, we don't go around doing that to each other. You should act from a place of kindness, but I also understand, hey, this is tough, and when we, hurt people. And that's exactly what was going on with that.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about something pretty similar. And it goes back to exactly what you're saying with parents who have this grudge against the grandparent. Now, I was going to ask you about your own parent, but I love that you brought this up, because this is very interesting, and it's the same type of situation. Go back, you got to have that relationship, grandparents, with both parents. But what happens if, Rodrigo, your grandparent and your child, okay, doesn't like you, and so they withhold your grandchild from you for visitations and stuff? Like, you want to have a relationship with your grandchild because you're the grandparent, but your child, which is the parent, is like, no way. You were horrible to me growing up. I don't want you to see this kid ever. Like, you messed up with me. There's no way I'm going to let you touch this kid right now. Or couldn't even be, maybe it's not even about the little kid. Maybe it's just, I don't like my parents. I'm never going to go over there. So they're never going to have a chance to come and meet meet their grandchild, whatever the situation might be. What do you think about that situation? Should grandparents have rights to at least visit their grandchild? Or, you know what? The parents, they get the rule. I mean, somebody has to, stand up for the child and speak for them. And the parent, well, legally, they're the person. Impactful parent, I want to hear from you. Leave me a voice message at speakpipe.com/theimpactfulparent and become a part of the show. Tell me your first name, your favorite episode, and why you love that episode so much. I want to hear your feedback, and it's easy with SpeakPipe. Go to speakpipe.com/theimpactfulparent, and I can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah, no, that just comes down to superior rights. The mom and dad, the parents. I'm sorry, the parents, right? They're the ones that really mandate the direction of their child's activities, how they get schooled, what they wear, what they eat, everything, and that includes grandparent rights. So if grandparents have a bad relationship if the grandparents have a bad relationship with their own kid, that means that, hey, you might not get to see your grandparents. The child might not be able to get to see their grandparents. I have personal experience with that, where I was in a relationship. My son, I wanted to take my son to go see my parents, and my partner at the time, she said no. She said no, da, da, da. And it had nothing to do with my parents and their abilities to be grandparents. It was just something petty, something that happened. She took offense to it, and she just took it out on them by doing that. Instead of like communicating with them, or me communicating with them. Very early on, this is a long time ago. So my parents spent a while without seeing their first grandson. And it was tough. It was definitely tough. But at the end of the day, my parents had no right to demand that or anything like that. So again, I refer back to what the Texas code, what the texasaccess.org says, maintain positive relationships. And so when you don't do that, those are some of the ramifications that can happen. That's why I always tell folks too, hey, if you have a bad relationship with your kids, that thing will come back to haunt you. It's rough, but I'm not saying like everybody deserves that, but if you're a bad parent and you don't take steps to resolve that, and then your child has kids, and then you're crying and you're sad that you don't get to see your grandchild, that can also be kind of an extension of your poor choices. I hate to say it that way. That sounds pretty rough, but I would definitely recommend that folks, hey, if you see that coming, definitely start building those relationships with your kids, because maybe, in the future when your grandkids are around, they're going to end up being the ones paying the price for the breakdown of the relationship between you and your daughter or you and your son. And I think that's pretty difficult. It's definitely long-term thinking, much further down the road, but something that, I would suggest folks kind of understand to try to avoid that whole situation.
So, Rodrigo, how should grandparents go about really maintaining and developing a good relationship with the parents so that they can have great relationship with their grandchildren, even if right now things aren't too great? It could be rocky with the parents. What is your recommendation for grandparents to do?
Grandparents, definitely can start off by being there, by showing support to both parents. I think that's a key one there, and it could be very tricky, right? Because your child may be like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you contacting them? And this and that. But at the end of the day, it's all about the child. Like, hey, look, it's two people that made this child. That have parents. Let's focus on that. I'm not taking sides. I just want to make sure that, our granddaughter or our grandson, has the best possible outcome, and that we're there for them, And I like to share a personal experience where, we had just broken up. I was typically picking up my oldest, little Rodrigo, there at her house. She was running late from the hospital, so she told me to go pick him up at my ex-in-laws house, right? His grandparents. That's where he would stay. They would take care of him during the day. And I went over there, and her mom was a little standoffish, but not terrible, she wasn't, but she's kind of like, a little off. But I'll never forget his grandpa and how kind he was. His name's Raul. And he came up to me and he shook my hand. He goes, hey, look, I don't know, and I don't care, but we're happy that you're still taking care of Rodrigo. And if you ever need anything, let us know. And you won't believe how kind that was to hear that from him. And it just put me at ease that I wasn't going to like enemy or hostile territory, that I wasn't the enemy, right? That I was a co-parent and that I was there to pick up my son. And it wasn't going to be awkward if I had to go over there, that I didn't have to be on pins and needles, or in that time, right, that I wasn't going to go over there with my chest puffed up, right? And that, like, hey, that's my son. And, you can't tell me shit, and have this negative attitude, right? No, he totally took the reins and just said, hey, This is neutral ground. We're not here to fight. We're not here nothing. We love Rodrigo. You're his dad. We love you. You need something, let us know. But he's going to be fine right here, and you can pick him up. And that sets such a great tone for our relationship. Not her and I, but their relationship with me. And I never, not that I go around speaking bad about her. I really don't. But during that time, I still hadn't gone through my journey, and I still didn't develop the communication skills that I needed. But instantly with them, it was always peace. It was always love. And when I would go pick them up, it was nice. We'd have a little conversation. If they needed something, they would tell me. One time, there was a hurricane that was coming through. I actually spoke with them, said, hey, do you need any plywood? I was working construction at the time. They said, like, yeah, we could. There I go to their house, and I boarded their windows up for them. And this is the type of relationship that the texasaccess.org site is really recommending, like positive interactions, positive relationships. And really, it started with them. It really started with them because I was not in a zone at that point to really start that. It really took him just being the mature adult, the mature grandparent, and more than anything, a loving grandparent to his grandchild, that whatever, was eating them up, right, that we broke up, he put it aside. He said, hey, we're here for y'all. We're here for you. We're here for her, and we're here for our grandchild. And that is exactly the example that I think people should follow, especially grandparents, in setting kind of the tone of the relationship with both parents.
Thank you for that example. That is perfect and awesome, just amazing. And what I love about it the most about what you just said is that's not a lot. That is a grandparent just saying, hey, taking that initiative. And so, I mean, it's beautiful. He didn't say much. All he did is say like 3 words to you. This is okay. And so many times as parents, we're going through a divorce. We're in this bad headspace. Everything on their side of the family is, like you said, the enemy, or they hate me. They don't like me at all. And so when you have to go and do any kind of exchange with foreign territory, and you're walking over those border lines, immediately as a parent, even just picking up your child, you're going to be on this defensive feeling, walking onto that property or wherever you might be. And really, that's just something that we're kind of putting in our own head. And that's not really the reality. It's just, we're just so defensive from the divorce or whatever, the relationship we have with the other parent, that we just extend that out through everything else. And we don't need to do that.
It's a lot of emotional control, Kristina. You're absolutely right. And at that time, I didn't have it. I definitely didn't have it. I was ready for that kind of confrontation. I was ready for the aggressiveness and the tension. And his granddad just eased everything by just setting the tone and letting me know that, hey, this is a safe space. And it's completely changed me. And I had a great relationship with them to this day. I asked Rodrigo, hey, how are your grandparents? Oh, they're doing great. Da, da, da. I think it was maybe a year ago or whatever. He told me, he goes, oh, they asked about you, and I told them that you're doing great. That, da, 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 you're eating a bunch of tacos. I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah, let them know, So it's just nice. It's just a nice way of being, and it wasn't fake. It wasn't, it wasn't anything but real. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I definitely support folks having that kind of baseline, especially when people, you said the word headspace. And I think that's still important. When people are not in the right headspace, you need somebody else to kind of pull you back, right? To kind of rein it in. And who else than grandparents? When you're in that situation, you have a ton of experience. You've probably been through these things before. You're probably the best one to put things into perspective and say, hey, look, we're not here about this. We're not here to fight, nothing like that. We're just here to show support and to show love.
And, if you are going through a divorce, you want those other grandparents. Yeah, your parents will do great things, but those other grandparents, they will help you too. Now that you're mentioning it and talking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, me too. It didn't even occur to me. But when I was getting my divorce, um, my ex's dad came and sat me down, and I remember he was very upset about the whole divorce, and not so much about the actual divorce, his son making, saying, hey, and wanting to, do something different. That wasn't really what his dad was upset about. His dad came to me and was just like, I am terrified that you're not going to let me see the kids anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you've been nothing but nice to me always. Like, why would I do that? And he's like, I know how divorces are, and I don't want you to do that. I'm scared. And he had it all played out in his brain. His dad came to me and was like, you're gonna find somebody else. You're a good woman, Kristina. I know it. And then you're gonna get married, and that other guy's not gonna want me around. And then I'm gonna see him less and less and less. And me being the primary caregiver of the children and not his son, which he knew, like, he was really worried about this. And I forgot all about that conversation until you just mentioned it to me now. And he did. He came to me and I said, no, don't worry about it. And to this day, he helps me more than anybody else in the family. More than my parents. When I can't count on my dad, I can count on my ex's dad. For real. Like, always. And in fact, I bet I could count on my ex's dad more than I can count on my dad. And now my dad's going to be like, what? If he hears this. What? But it's true. Like, when I really need somebody, he'll be there. And I continued that relationship. And my kids are grateful for that to this day, that I maintained that good relationship with my ex's dad, and that he really became a part of our lives. But it did take the grandparent doing that initiative for me to completely get out of that headspace, change my frame of reference, and think, oh my gosh, not everything is a battle. Really, the battle is only right here. And I needed somebody to pull me out of that, and he did. So, best advice, Rodrigo. Yes, grandparents, listen to that, because I can attest for it. It does. It works.
Yeah, it definitely works. And I'm glad that you had that conversation early on. Again, it sets the baseline. It lets both of y'all know that, hey, we're here for the kids. And you just said it yourself. Your kids are so grateful to have that relationship with them that they, look, do kids grow up without their grandparents? They do. They grow up without their moms and dads sometimes, and so forth. But is there benefits to them growing up with their grandparents? Absolutely. And so grandparents are, I would say, an essential part of, kids growing up, to have those relationships, to have that nurturing, to have that love. And I think, my experience and your experience are testament to that, hey, you know what? Yes, there's things going on. There's all this tension going on, but we don't have to have that tension. And we can definitely settle it down and make sure that we're all in this together for the right reason, which is, at the end of the day, the kids.
Start your Impactful Parent journey by downloading the Impactful Parent app. The Impactful Parent app is free, so you can carry help, tips, and parenting resources right in your pocket. Download the app today. Go to theimpactfulparent.com or your phone's app store. Search Impactful Parent and discover how you can step up your parenting game and become a more impactful parent. And if you would like to reach out to Rodrigo Bravo and his co-parenting mediation and coaching services, you can email him at rodrigobravojr@gmail.com. Thank you for listening today. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And don't forget, the Impactful Parenting Podcast is an extension of the Impactful Parent community. Go to the Impactful Parent website and download the free Impactful Parent app so you don't miss a parenting tip that can help you and your family. Thanks for listening today. So go to theimpactfulparent.com and see you next episode.